Hello, dreamers! As some of you may probably know, I am reading stories, tales, and legends in French because I have a huge collection of those in French. But I live in Ireland, and some of my friends wanted me to make them in English, so I don't have the same amount of tales in English. I will probably build that up with time. Right now I have a few, and one of those are Kerry Folk Tales because I live in the county of Kerry, so I bought that one and I read it. It's quite interesting. There are different stories in there, but I thought I will read from the beginning. See, so at the beginning of that book it's mainly about history, so the history that you have in County Kerry. So the first one is Black 47. There have been far too many bad times in Ireland over the millennia. Our history is spattered with an untold number of stories of grief and suffering. One such distressing time was nearly 170 years ago, when the vicious blight travelled over the warm air from Europe and infected the valuable potatoes growing in the ground, causing them to turn black and rot. Such was the scourge of the affliction that there were twice as many people living in Ireland than as there are now, with many departing this life or this land for better places. God be good to them. The people all over the island had only small plots of land that they rented from the English landlords, and it was from these wee plots that they eked out an existence from themselves and for their families. The only thing they had to grow and eat were lamper potatoes, and the disease ravaged the lamper the worst of all, leaving people with nothing to eat, practically overnight. The poor people grew weak and became desperate. Those that survived the first year tried to sow the rotten seed potatoes the following season in the hope of getting a crop, but nothing grew. Many then did the unthinkable and butchered their donkey and dogs for food in the hope that this blight would pass, but it did not. It wasn't long before the people started to die of starvation, and the heavy odor of rotten spuds and death settled over the land. People were dying so quickly they could not make the coffins fast enough, and there are even accounts of people being buried alive. There is one particular story from Kerry of a man who was being placed into a grave when he awoke, saying, "Do not bury me, for I am not yet dead." The doctor at the graveside, who had lost his mind through sheer exhaustion, said, "You liar! The doctor knows best," and the trench was filled in. The blight started to take hold in 1845 and grew in strength and severity until the height of 1847, when land and communities were decimated. This year was so bad it became known as Black 47. Many people had to leave their houses in the mornings and go around from place to place looking for something, anything to eat. Many even ate grass in the hope of getting some substance, but of course it was of little benefit. When all other options were exhausted, they could apply to be taken into one of the Union workhouse in Listowel Tralee, Dingle, Killarney, Carshveen or Kenmare. Those workhouses were set up to look after those who could not look after themselves, and many were horrid but necessary places, full of desperate people in desperate situations. It is true that starvation subsisted for many in the workhouses as they received meager rations of financial aid and a yellow meal, but painful deaths continued at the same level as before from fever, dysentery and scurvy. As the famine intensified, workhouses became so overcrowded and underfunded that they began turning people away, resulting in the destitute being left to die at the roadside and in the ditches. After burying his sister without a priest, Miles Foley had reached breaking point. His poor sister had been turned away from the local warehouse in Tralee just the day before, and the cold November weather outside proved too much for her already frail body. In equal measure of anger and grief, he strung a black burial shroud across a large stick taken from a tree and painted the words "Flag of Distress" on it. Then he gathered the support of his remaining family and neighbors, and they marched in formation to the warehouse, demanding that they be allowed entry or would force their way in. The superintendent and other officers locked the gate and barricaded the door with furniture, but desperation led to the men and women pulling the gate off its hinge and pushing their way in through the door. As they got inside the main entrance hall, they found that waiting for them were several members of the local constabulary armed with batons. The guards did not hesitate in beating the poor wretches mercilessly, forcing them back out onto the road. 2 of the men had received such a hitting that they died right there. There was no charity for those in need of charity in those times, and sadly, this is just one of many such stories of how philanthropy and oppression went hand in hand at that dark time in our history. So this is it for this time. I hope you liked it, even if it's quite dark. A lot of island history is, unfortunately. And I apologize for my accent. I hope it was still easy to understand what I was reading, and I will hope I will improve in the future. Thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe if you like the video and if you want more of those. So, farewell then, and see you anon. Bye.